welcome to the summer term information evening. This is actually quite a short presentation. Obviously, at Parents' Evening last week, we managed to speak to quite a lot of our parents, and I just really want to say thank you for all our parents who attended. It was a genuinely lovely evening to get to see familiar faces, but also new faces as well. So it was lovely to meet you all, and teachers spoke really highly of parents and obviously students who are doing an incredible job this year in year 7. So there were kind of four main areas that I wanted to cover today, and none of this will be new information, I hope. So just really quick information about progress tests that are coming up in week 3 of summer 2, and kind of the process we are going through to get there. Home learning, just going over some clarifications of our current process. Obviously, we are constantly reviewing for any processes to do with home learning. The main review will happen in light of an autumn start. And some parents in the survey mentioned the DL testing information that we've collected through testing this year, and what we do with that information. I just want to share currently what we do, and obviously if parents have got any kind of thoughts on that, we would love to hear them as part of feedback from this evening. And for the year 7 specifically, we are going to be looking at MFL and subject choice for year 8. Just to clarify that, I know that many parents spoke to our MFL team around this at Parents' Evening, but I just want to clarify this process. We will be speaking to year 7, so we have put it on Teams already, but we'll be speaking to year 7 about this a bit more in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so let's start. So as you'll be aware, we have our second learning cycle. We're coming towards the end of our second learning cycle, which is where we take our progress test 2. And these assessments all take place in lessons, so in normal lessons for year 7. Obviously, the spring assessments have been and gone, but this assessment period will be between Monday the 16th of June and Friday the 27th of June. So currently, we have given students, today and tomorrow we'll be giving students their timetables. I know I was in a lot of form rooms this morning, and they were filling in their timetables. Some forms have not started that yet, that will happen tomorrow, but they were filling in their timetables because it links directly to their school timetable. However, since we've had that printed, there is one change, and that is that Spanish and French will be done in separate weeks, and that's through discussion with students, because rightly, I feel, or fairly certainly, students struggle with doing French and Spanish in the same week, because obviously the language gets confused. So we are moving those progress tests, so students will be informed which week they do French and which week they do Spanish, and they'll be done in separate weeks. So one will do it in the first week of progress test and the other in the second week of progress test. So students will be informed about which that is via their language teacher. So just to clarify, they will be slightly different to what's on the timetable. But like I said, students have been given them timetables today to start transferring over their own personal progress test timetable, so they know exactly when they've got their progress test. The next stage of this, obviously, is for them to look at their study booklets and what they're being tested in, and to try and highlight the revision that they then want to kind of place on their revision timetable, like where they need to focus in each subject. We are going through with them also in form times certain revision strategies that they can use just to support them through this process, because this process, yes, it's a process where we learn quite a lot about our students, and that's really useful for us as teachers to intervene and address any gaps that they might still have. But also it's a really good process for them in terms of how they prepare for testing, getting to know kind of what revision strategies work for them, what don't work for them, or even kind of more accurately, I imagine, what revision strategies work for which subject. But what we do at Taunton High is we introduce those revision strategies slowly. So we don't throw them all at them and say, pick out them. we teach them how to do them within form time and within classrooms, so they can kind of build that kind of toolbox, I guess, or toolkit rather, over the course of the year. And years, so year 7 into year 8 and year 9. What we have done though on our website, and this is a really important piece of information really, our website's changed slightly, and under parents we have got year group hubs now. So if you go into the year 7 hub, in there is pretty much the main things that you'd want to know for your child. So you can click on parents on our website, and if you go into the relevant year group hub, it's got, I think, the most important or the most pertinent aspects of what you want to know for your child in there. A good example of that is we've put the college application process in for the year 10s because they want to know in advance what that looks like in year 11. Just things that will support parents in supporting their children. But the one big change we've made is there is a link called Progress Test Support. And if you click on that, there are 3 videos that are useful for students and also useful for parents if you want to know a little bit more. So those 3 videos cover 3 separate things. So the first thing it covers is how to transfer how to create their timetable, so what that looks like and how that can be done. So it goes through that process. The second thing is how they can identify revision focuses from different subjects, like the best way to do that, to focus in their revision, because it can be overwhelming if they're looking at all the things that in English, for example, that they need to know. Actually, that can be broken down into areas that they feel most comfortable with and least comfortable with, and where they spend their time should be on obviously those areas they feel least comfortable with. So it goes through how to do that. And then there's a third video that is advice, I guess, for parents on how they can support revision. And it's nothing new really. What we say is there are some deadly sins when it comes to revision, and it just goes through ways parents can support that. And that should be a very kind of independent process. Revision should be a very independent process, but there are things you can do to help students kind of not make those mistakes when they are revising, things like passive revision, putting their phones away. Really small pieces of advice, but if you want to give that a watch, I think it is worth a watch just for those small tips. But kind of one thing that we want to do as a school is have this information available to parents all the time. So I am actually going to be going out and seeing if there's any parents interested in kind of coming to speak to us about our website and what they would want to see on there, because we want to make those changes, even more useful for our parents. What would we want to see on there? Because this evening is really nice to kind of talk parents through kind of the most important things coming up, but actually moving forward we probably want to use this evening with a sharper focus on aspects maybe that we don't get time to talk about in the detail we would want to. So things that parents might want some advice on, maybe some things to do with digital safety, and really target these evenings with really specific focuses. Obviously there'll be the messaging at kind of the start of the presentation, but that's kind of where we want to move towards. So if our website could be more useful in kind of sharing information with parents, we want to make sure it is. So that's kind of, if you go on our website, like I say, click on parents. There are 3 tabs at the top: staff, students and parents. Click on parents. There's a year group hub for each year, year 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. And in there you should find the most relevant information for your child. So that's something that I want to point you to. If you are interested in helping us with the website and what you'd like to see in it, please do get in contact with me. It's a.henderson@cheltenhigh.manchester.sch.uk. We'd love your input really on what you would find useful, and then we can work on that over the summer to kind of get that into place where that's appropriate, because it could be a really powerful thing, the website, but it also needs to work for parents, it needs to be useful for you, and it needs to be information that is easily accessible, but also you know where to go for it as well, and what information you want. We'd love to know that information. Home learning came up a lot in the survey that we did, and as I've said, we are obviously reviewing home learning kind of wholesale, but just the current setup as it is now, we just wanted to kind of go through this evening. So there are 3 elements to home learning at Chorlton High. So there's home learning, the homework, set by the class teacher that requires submission, and that submission can be done via Teams, or it can be done in person. And more often than not, I would argue it's done in the classroom. You've got, so Chorlton High will set all home learning tasks through the online platform, and it's available for all students to see. Obviously, parents can see this as well via their child's account if the child signs in via Microsoft Teams. So you can see what home learning has been set by teachers. We have also gone out to teachers to remind them that all home learning needs to be set through this vehicle, through Microsoft Teams, so it is clear that all assignments on Microsoft Teams, that's the homework that students are required to do. And then you've got the kind of other aspect of home learning, which is home study, and this kind of comes into play at this point really, where it's preparation for assessments and tests that they're doing. It might be reflection and gap filling after the progress test, and in the build up to assessments, we call that home study. So much of the homework, if it's been set directly, should be linked to the assessments that are coming up. So it should be all linked. So that's the home studies aspect of it. And then obviously we've got the home reading, and we continue to stress how important this is. We encourage our students to devote time at home to reading, as this really does give them a wider knowledge base and understanding of the world, but it also increases that really important reading age, which has a massive impact on how well they can access the school curriculum. We expect all our students to read at least 3 times a week at home. However, the reality is we would encourage them to read daily. It goes back to that whole idea of it being part of their routine. I think if it's not part of the routine, it gets lost. So it's parents supporting that and deciding with their child really when that should take place. So as I said, home learning and home study is set on Microsoft Teams, and it might link to another platform. And I know that's been some of the frustration for parents in terms of the number of different platforms we've got, and that's part of our review moving forward. But currently the situation is we have Educate for English, Science and Computing. I know as an English teacher personally who teaches Year 7 that I don't always use Educate, and in fact very rarely use Educate as English homework, and lots of the things that I set are on paper. You've got Seneca can be used for some subjects. Sparks is always used for maths, and then you've got Quizlet for languages. If another site is used, we try and keep log on details as similar as possible to make this easier for students. And usually it is their Prospera email address. Obviously, where single sign-in is available, that is what we go for. So this will allow students to just sign into their Microsoft Teams assignments and go through there, so they can sign in with Microsoft. So it should just be a single sign-on. And that's the ideal. That's kind of what we want to move towards for all our platforms. And it's certainly something that we have. We're on. It's certainly available for as many as we can currently have it available for, because we are aware of how complicated it can get otherwise. Also, though, on the website we have more information about home learning that breaks down. So we pre-plan a lot of our home learning. That breaks down kind of what students have been asked to do in every subject. So you can get kind of a big overview on the website under students and parents also, if you want to see that. So home learning and home study resources. There are additional resources that can be found on our school website by clicking on students and selecting the Home Study Support tab. In there's so much in there, to be honest. There's lots of videos, links and resources to support students with home learning and home study activities at home. You have the videos for the different revision strategies that we ask students to use as well. So if, for example, your child's revising and they are struggling with how they maybe use a certain revision skill, or they've not quite figured it out, please point them to that direction, because it is, all the different revision strategies are there, and they can watch a video and it shows them how to do it, so they can then apply it to the revision that they're doing. So, you know, there's lots of information in that kind of area. Most of the sites require students to sign in though. So like I say, it's generally with their Prospera email address. And to use this, where there is a sign in with Microsoft button, students should click onto this to sign on with their Prospera email address. So where it says sign in with Microsoft, if you click onto that, it will allow them to do it with their Microsoft Teams email address. If a student has, you know, lost their password or forgotten their password, please can you ask them to speak to a member of their teaching staff. So we, as a member of teaching staff, you can go on the splash page and we can change passwords for them instantly. If a student's struggling with that, for whatever reason that might be, get them to speak to a member of the year team, because that will definitely be a way forward for them if they are struggling with that. Okay, so that's kind of home learning. I'm just going to go back. That's home learning as it currently is. Like, as I've said, you know, we reviewed this year. Like, it's not something that we are listening to some of the kind of concerns that we had, certainly around the amount at the start. So all of that is getting reviewed, but that's currently where we are with home learning. GL assessments, this came up quite a lot in the survey. So first of all, let me just clarify what they are. So in Spring 2, students sit GL tests in English, maths and science. And we ask students not to revise for these tests, as they are extra to the progress tests, which are based on our taught curriculum. The GL tests are externally set and do not necessarily match the taught curriculum. And we just wanted to highlight what we use them for. So we use them for a couple of things. So we use them to ensure that the curriculum that is covered in each subject is effective. And with no revision, it gives us a really real picture of that, because we are testing where they are in that moment. There's no additional kind of practice going into it. So we get a real life picture of how effective the taught curriculum is. We use it to look at any areas in which our curriculum is not performing as well as other areas. And this information is then fed back to curriculum areas so that they can develop their curricula. So you know, if there's an area where, as a school or as a year group, we seem to be underachieving, which is rare. We perform very highly on these tests because it's all comparative. We feed that back in to curriculum areas. So there might be a gap in this area in English, and that will then be addressed as part of the curriculum. And it also gives us an indication of where some students may need some extra support, so we can then kind of target those students specifically. At the moment, we don't share the detailed results, and this is kind of the reason why. So we may do this in the future, but we don't at the moment for a few reasons. The results are really overly complicated and can be quite demotivating for students, as they contain a lot of national comparisons and are very detailed. So it can be overwhelming. It can be an overwhelming amount of information for students. And as they're based solely on one test performance, and the students haven't necessarily covered all the content, because that's not the approach we take with it, kind of the validity of some of the results, we would argue, could be questioned. So really, the testing that we complete when it comes to the GL assessments is more about us finding out if the curriculum's working, and where are there any gaps in our curriculum based on the results, and for us to address that rather than overwhelming the students, which is why we ask them not to revise for them. It's why we don't teach to this test, because actually that would then negate the reason we are doing it, which is to see how effectively our curriculum is working for students when we look at the different areas. But it does feed into improvements where improvements are kind of identified as needed. So the results that they show really results show that our curriculum provision is in all years and in all subjects continually above average. So we know that's positive. Obviously, we're proud of that and pleased with that. But I guess it's opening up that conversation with parents about how useful you think that would be for that information to be shared. But we just wanted to explain why we don't routinely share it, because sometimes we can have too much information. Not schools per se, but parents can, and certainly students can get overwhelmed by the results and the way the results are fed back to us. Okay, so just one more message from me really, and then a couple of reminders of things that it'd be useful if parents did want to get involved in. So year 7 language options for year 8. As I mentioned towards the start of the year, and what I think it was an evening like this that I mentioned it, in year 8, students will be given an option to study just one language, and they get to choose which language that is. Now, obviously, we would kind of expect that to be the language they then go on to study in year 9 and for GCSE. However, changes might be made for exceptional circumstances. So, we're not, that's not fixed in the sense that that is the only option. There are exceptional circumstances where that would change. Their choice, and this is something that we'll speak to students about in a bit more detail, should be based on which they enjoy the most or they feel the most successful at, and not based on which language their friends might be studying. That can become a bit problematic if they start having conversations with friends and they pick the wrong language. That's problematic for them when it comes to kind of really engaging with that subject and taking that subject forward. If your child is a native speaker of French or Spanish, it is not recommended to opt for the native language. As to be honest, if we've got a native speaker of French or Spanish, they'll be entered for that GCSE anyway. So it's recommended that they challenge themselves and they go for the other language ideally as the choice. What that means option wise is rather than doing 1 hour of Spanish and 1 hour of French each week, they'll do 2 hours of Spanish and 2 hours of French each week. So either or. However, we do have a choice for them to pick to continue both. And that means they'll do 1 hour of each language if they do make that choice. That kind of comes with a bit of a caveat, because obviously we can only offer this if we have enough students to fill a class, and for timetabling reasons, that's kind of a limitation we have on it. So if your child is interested in continuing with both, please do get them to pick that option, because like I say, if we can fill a class, we will offer this, absolutely no problem at all. I guess the thing for me to share with you is the process. So I have already posted this on the year team post. So students can click directly through there and choose the language that they want. That'll ask them to put their names in, their form in, and they can choose the language they want. Ideally, all choices will be made by Monday, the 23rd of May. We'll be talking to students. If you can encourage your child to really have a think about that and click onto their Teams page and do that, that'd be really useful for them to make that choice. Like I say, we're going to speak to students about this separately as well, but it's there. And I think we've sent you a letter as well with a link in as well, so you've got that information. This is obviously to support us grouping and timetabling for next year, which is why we're doing it now. So yeah, if you could encourage your child to get onto MS Teams, go to their year group, their year team page, and look at posts. Look for Miss A Henderson, and it should say choose your MFL subject for year 8. If they click through that, they'll be given the 3 choices: Spanish, French, or continue with both. And if they pick one of them, then we can get moving with that. And obviously, any students that make a mistake there, please just let us know. In fact, just tell your child to let us know, and we can amend anything like that. So that's not a problem at all. It's not, you make your choice and that's the end of it. You can't change it. Obviously, ideally, they make the right choice the first time. But if a mistake's made, we understand that. Please just let us know, and we will address that as appropriate. So, couple of things. That's how long it is. That's all the information really from me. But I guess a couple of things just to remind parents: if you're interested in supporting with the website and thinking about being part of a conversation about what you'd find useful on there, that'd be brilliant. And if you can if you can have a look at the progress test support videos, if that's useful to you, that's also going to be really helpful to support that process at home. But really, one thing that we really kind of encourage is for this language option to be made in the next week or two, just so we can start that process of timetabling and making sure we've got our students in the right places. So thank you very much. Like I said, very short. We are moving towards kind of these being messages, but hopefully moving forward, this can be more of a kind of focused session on something useful moving forward. And my example obviously is digital safety, but there's lots of other ways that it could be useful also. Any questions, please do send me an email. That's not a problem at all. And I apologise again for the late start. My tech definitely did not play ball today. So thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you again for last week. It was an absolute pleasure to meet our parents again and to be able to share with you all the amazing things your children are doing in school as well. I know there were lots of smiling faces as they were leaving the building, which is wonderful to see. So thanks again. Have a lovely evening, and we will be in contact soon. Thank you.